the funeral, as the country is still under level 2, under the lockdown regulations, and so to adhere to those regulations. Remember, many of his friends were called to the family home from last night and this morning, and so only a few members, his friends, family, and of course the members of the South African National Defence Force are going to be here. Of course, it's a very, very sad day, Desiree, as the province of KwaZulu-Natal, as South Africa, as you're saying, bids farewell to a consummate soldier, a freedom fighter, a leader par excellence, as his former comrade and friend, and also fellow student, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, who in fact this morning will be delivering the eulogy, as he said this week in one of the tributes that he made to the late Lieutenant General. Throughout the week, there's been a number of memorial services and an opportunity for a lot of people who have worked, who have interacted with Lieutenant General Vejay over the years, to reminisce about the man that he was, and certainly from the tributes and the messages of condolences that have been coming through the week, I think 2 words sum up who he was. He was a very kind and a humble man. In fact, Desiree, just 7 months ago at the funeral of Mr. Derek McBride, the father of Mr. McBride, we were here at the City Hall, and the Lieutenant General gave a tribute. And just sitting here remembering that we were standing right here with him, and I remember dropping something, and immediately he fell to the ground and picked it up. And I, at the time, did not recognize who the man was, and he said, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And so when we heard and we were reading the tributes that were coming in, I think it's understood, it made a sense that when a lot of people said he was truly a very kind and very humble human being. Today he makes his final journey from his home in Chatsworth. In fact, though, he was born in Cato Manor, and when the then apartheid government declared the area a whites-only area, his family then moved to Chatsworth. Later on, he studied, went to high school in the south of Durban, in the area of Nkomazi, and then moving to the University of KwaZulu-Natal, where he enrolled as a medical student. And many of the people who know him and who've spoken about him start to relay his story from the days that he was a medical student. In 1979 to 1981, he led the Medical Student Representative Council, and Dr. Krish Valabji, another well-respected doctor and leader in the ANC, also coming out and speaking. Dr. Zweli Mkhize, we heard the Deputy Health Minister, Dr. Joe Phaahla, all speaking about their days and the type of leader he was from his student days. In fact, we were told that he led one of the longest boycotts in 1979 at the university, and this of course had followed the 1976 student uprising. And they said although he was a very kind, soft-spoken individual or man, but he was very much resolute. He very much was out there to fight for the students. He not only worked with the students, but he was also very active from that very young age with the community. Then, of course, joining the MK Condolence, the ANC's military wing, also while he was still in the medical school, and started working with the ANC's military wing there, and then alongside Dr. Sibongiseni Dloma, the former health MEC of KwaZulu-Natal, as well as Dr. Zweli Mkhize and many others. And as we know, then of course in 1985, they alongside 11 others, he alongside 11 others were then sentenced to Robben Island. But if you follow on in his life and everything that he did, he was a medical doctor first, but also more importantly, he wanted to work for this country. He gave up so much to ensure that this country gained the freedom that it has. And probably notably, one might say that one of the highest honors he is said to have received in his life was to be entrusted with the health of the then first and most important citizen in South Africa. That was the life of the late former President Nelson Mandela. And he, alongside a team of 22 doctors, they were responsible for the care and the well-being of the late former President Nelson Mandela. So today it's going to be a very short program. We know that one of his children, the son, will be delivering a tribute from the family. His political mentor, Mr. Mac Maharaj, he's also going to be delivering a tribute to a very close friend of his and somebody who he's worked with for many, many years. Of course, as I said, the eulogy is going to be delivered by Dr. Zweli Mkhize, our health minister, but who's known and has worked with the Lieutenant General for many, many years. There's also then going to be a message from the Minister of Defense, Me Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngagula. I'm just looking to the side. The procession, it seems, has now arrived here at the Durban City Hall, and the coffin will then make its way into the hall for the funeral service to begin. Desiree. Yeah. Thank you very much. once again to you, Desiree, and to our viewers. The funeral procession, as we said just a few minutes ago, has now arrived here at the Durban City Hall. Of course, the late Lieutenant General Vejay Ramlakan making his final journey from his home in Chatsworth here to the Durban City Hall for his funeral service. Gathered today is the members of the South African National Defence Force as they bid farewell to one of their commanders, a man who had done so much for the military and so much for the country. And without wasting much time, let me bring in now, speaking for the South African National Defence Force, in particular this funeral here, is Colonel Tembi. So, Ngogai, Colonel, thank you so much for agreeing to chat with us, and condolences to you and of course just seeing your members here today. A very difficult day. You're here to bid farewell to an exceptional man. Many in society, his close friends, those have described him as a leader par excellence. And of course, having worked within the military, you know him much more.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, our late General Vejay Ramlakan was one of those leaders who stood head and shoulder above the rest. He was an intelligent general, a good medical doctor, but a soldier at the same time. His passing has dealt us a very, very heavy blow. We are here today to lay him to rest in dignity, because he deserves this kind of dignity and the military honors that we are according him today, here in his hometown of Durban. And we are here as the military. We understand because of COVID-19 restrictions, not all of us can be here, but we are pleased that our rest of the family can tune in virtually and be part of this service virtually.
Earlier on in the week, I know one of the memorial services was held by the South African, the military health services, and a number of speakers there. And I picked up on one of your members who was speaking about what he did for the military, transformation in the military, how much he cared, particularly to see young soldiers coming in and making their way up the ranks of the Defence Force.
Our late general, no doubt, was a change agent. He believed in transformation, which is one of the policies of our government. He helped a lot of youngsters. I'm one of them, whom he helped from previously disadvantaged backgrounds to go through the ranks in the military and afford them the opportunity to be skilled and to be trained. And we will miss him. We will miss him. We believe that his departure was premature. We still needed him around. And he did a lot for the country. Thank you.
One of the important projects that he worked on, which was quite close to his heart, having listened to one of the tributes from a very close friend of his, Dr. Krish Valabji, who worked on the project, was the book. He documented the history of the military, and it was titled The Fourth Dimension, the history of the military health in South Africa, a 770-page book, which we are told he completed in record time. Take us through, and how important is documenting the history of the military health and the book. He's left that now to the country. He's left that now to the military.
It was very important for him that this history, this inclusive history, I might add, needed to be documented, because prior to 1994, as you would know, only one side of our history was documented, and the contributions of healthcare professionals in the former non-statutory forces was not documented anywhere. So you had a one-sided history of the military health in our country, and therefore it was important for him that the other side of the military health history of our country was also documented, and that was the thinking behind this project. Then he decided that he would still document the history of pre-1994, but also the history of the non-statutory forces. And he did that in record time, like you said, a big book to read, yeah.
Colonel, a lot of people have now said there's a lot to learn from him. You've said that yourself, you learned, you are where you are through the role that he played also in your personal growth in the Defence Force. What then do the younger soldiers learn from a man such as the Lieutenant General?
One thing we can all learn from him, he came from a very, very humble background, like all of us from previously disadvantaged communities. But he always understood that we are all human beings. We have the same cognitive abilities like other races in the country. All we needed was to be given the space and the opportunity and training to shine. So he believed in that. He is a shining example of that. And we all can learn from him to say that no matter our background, humble background, poor backgrounds, but we can claim our space in our beautiful country.
Thank you so much for your time this morning, Colonel Stimbiso Ngagai there speaking to us as the funeral should get underway at Desiree very shortly. In fact, as we're speaking about one of the projects, the book that the Lieutenant General documenting the history of the military service, the health military service here in South Africa. One of the other projects that we are told sadly that he had started as a former prisoner in Durban Island, having been sentenced in 1986, is that he was busy documenting the history of the over 3,000 ex-prisoners on Durban Island, and unfortunately that is a project that we're told he was unable to finish. But hopefully we will be speaking to the leaders of the ANC who are going to be here at this funeral, where they come as well together to bid a farewell to a commander and a leader par excellence. Desiree?
Umfana was on a lo mtsitse lebukulu.
May I request that we then seat? Minister of Defense and Military Veterans, Mama Mapisa Nagula. The Minister of Health, Dr. Z.L. Kize. The Acting Chief of the SANDF, Lieutenant General Mapanya. Acting Sergeant General, Major General Mapaha. The Chief Director of Human Resource Management, Major General Mutopane. General officers, flag officers, senior officers and other officers, warrant officers and non-commissioned officers, the Ramlakan family and all the relatives, leaders of our country in various formations, including Umkhonto weSizwe, the former political prisoners that were part of this giant, religious leaders, the healthcare professionals of various categories, the class of 1980 at the University of Natal Black Section, all mourners, media present, fellow South Africans in all areas where you are able to be part of these proceedings. Good afternoon. I am Brigadier General Dlomo, tasked by the Acting Chief of the SANDF, together with the family, to be a program director in these proceedings of Lieutenant General Vejay Ramlakan. It is a military funeral within the confines of COVID-19. We will therefore adhere to the program as reflected with us. I'm also instructed further that we need to be at the Clear Estate area crematorium at 2:30, but the Captain General will expand on this later on the program. If then you have a temptation to want to change the program, please resist that temptation. If there's anything you can't falter the SANDF on, is the time keeping. Let us therefore, some of us, both civilians and the military, respect that. This giant that we are gathered about here is an internationalist of note. He loved his people, his country. We have been reminded of that over the past few days since he passed on. We are gathered here to try and ease the pain of the family. We are all hurting, but the family is hurting much more than us. Therefore, we need to give them that support. I would now invite Vipra Soktur to come and open these proceedings with a word of prayer. Vipra. We'll have to wait until, yeah, come.
Program Director, Dr. Shlomo, Acting Chief, SANDF, all protocol observed. I would like you to please bow your heads and let us offer a prayer for Dr. Vejay Ramlakan, the dear departed soul. तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो न प्रचोदयात् ॐ भूर्भुवस्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो न प्रचोदयात् ॐ भूर्भुवस्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो न प्रचोदयात् ॐ असतो मा सत्गमय तमसोर्मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्युर्मा अमृतं गमय सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामय सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखमाप्नुयात्. We say to you, O Almighty God, you are the creator of this universe, the granter of wishes, the remover of all darkness, and the granter of all happiness. We say to you, this beautiful soul is on its journey to you. May you receive it, and may it be in a state of comfort. And we say to you, Almighty God, the family is in a process and in a time of grieving, and we ask you to give them strength during this time. We say to you, Almighty God, and we pray to you, may you lead us from darkness to light, from untruth to truth, and may this wonderful soul be in a state of peace, peace, peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vipra Sukhdor, for the opening prayer, comforting prayer to all of us. When we started the program, I was informed that they were busy loading or preparing the video. I would have to be guided if that has now happened. If not, I will still be guided by Ricky Naidu. We will then be going into the messages from the family representatives. If the video has not been loaded, if Ricky Naidu is now showing me a thumbs up, therefore I take it that he's still struggling himself, so I read that sign message from him. May I start with Mr. Anand Ramlakan, the brother to our departed comrade and the leader, to come forward and give a message on behalf of the family.
Minister of Defense, Minister of Health, Acting Chief of the Defense Force, and all other general officers, other ranks, and warrant officers. Gives me a pleasure to say a few words on behalf of the family of what Vijay meant to us as a brother, as a son, as a son-in-law, and a general neighborly person. You know, when I think of how do I describe him, you have to go back aeons when you had the creation of gods. Now, gods had gained worship by the deeds they had done, and they were those deeds were associated with, in Hindu philosophy, it's associated with those gods. And Vijay was named after the victorious Lord Hanuman. And if you know, Lord Hanuman in our scriptures was one of the greatest servitudes to other people or other beings at his time. And when I think about when I was about 5 or 6 years old, when Vijay was staying in Amkumas and he used to visit us during his holiday school breaks, and he was there cleaning our yard, you know, at a very early morning, and was getting me when I was 6 years old. Even then you could see that this guy does not really matter for himself, but he's concerned of the society at large. And me as a 6-year-old thinking, you know, I want to play now, and he's got me helping him work at that age. And I didn't like him for it, but I guess that's all children are like that. And this is how it is. And I know for the deeds that he has done here on this beautiful land of ours, as he's walking in heaven now, Lord Krishna will tell him, I am now at comfort because the man, everything is going to be all right now in heaven because Vijay is back. He has done his tour on earth. He gave his messages. He's always thought of other people instead of himself. From the time I can remember him till the last month ago, which I spoke to him because he was busy with his duties, what did he need to do. Always served everybody. In fact, in my family of 8, was my mother and father 10, we've always drawn strength from him. Always took heed to whatever he said because he was that magnanimous of a character. And I remember, you know, he was loved so much that whenever he came for holidays, we all used to cry when he was going back because we knew Vijay was around, and it was also, you know, Vijay means victorious. That's what the English translation, Vijay is victorious. All lives used to be very victorious during those holiday periods. And to say, Vijay, that the Lord is going to accept you now in heaven, for you have done your deeds, what He has instructed you when you was born in 1957, on the 28th of September, to do your duty for mankind. And I'm sure most of you will be in agreement when he has done his bit for mankind and more for South Africa. And I thank you all. And Vijay, I'll see you when I have to see you. Knowing you, you've already probably changed heaven now to make it more reflective of how it should be. God bless you, Vijay. And I love you. I'm going to miss you. It's times when we should talk, but anyway, life is such that we are born on earth as a temporary holiday. You have now done your bit for earth. You have paid your account for earth to its people, to its creators. God bless you. Thank you.
The last remaining days of December 1985 and also the first part of January 1985, the Butterfly Unit was dealing with the challenge of being in detention, and we knew in which room was Comrade Sandy being interrogated, because we'll hear the fresh cries of Rosa. And we knew, Rosa, you didn't know what was happening to your mother. And we were dealing with the challenge ourselves, but Comrade Sandy was dealing with two challenges, even much more. She was dealing with the interrogation of the police. She was also dealing with the little Rosa there. We are very brave. We are very proud of you, Sandy, for all those hardships that you carried through. Now let me invite Rosa, that innocent girl who was there in the detention, who didn't know anything that was happening at that time, to give a message on behalf of the children. Rosa, come forward.
Good day, everyone. I'm Rosa, Vijay's daughter. Thank you for coming. Before I begin my speech, my sister has a few words she would like to say.
Good day, everyone. I will remember my father as a man who helped one gain a positive perspective of life when one needed it. I am thankful for all the wisdom he enlightened me with and encouraged me to make every birthday a celebration and to enjoy life, and I feel that is important. My father often used to take my brother, Kieran, and I out for drives. One of the memories that I am fond of is when he took my brother and I to Bronkhorstspruit Buddhist Temple to celebrate Chinese New Year, and it was a beautiful experience as we enjoyed the presence of the people, the cuisine, and architecture. I also remember the joy of celebrating Diwali with the family. My father taught and showed us how to choose the light over the darkness. Thank you.
Thank you, Anisha. My first memory of my dad is of looking at him through a screen, placing my hand to match his against the glass, and hearing his voice over those black phones in the Robben Island visitors' rooms. Therefore, I understand his contribution to the great community, and that there are many people who have their own stories about him. But I can only tell you about how I knew my father as he was to me, my dad. Many of you know my dad as a quiet person, but I know him as a chatterbox. He He would often repeat what he was trying to say to me or my siblings 3 times in one long speech. Very often that drove me nuts. He would spring difficult questions on us or try to teach us something. Just over a month ago, as we traveled back home from my grandfather's funeral, my dad asked us one of those difficult questions. He asked us, what did we learn from our grandfather and his life? Honestly, I couldn't give you as succinct an answer today as I was able to give my dad on that day, when thinking of my dad. At this moment, I could only tell you about a few of the small things my dad taught me. One of the first things my dad taught me was how to knit. That was a skill he picked up on the island, learning through books with no teachers, and yet he had knitted garments for me and my mum. And then he came home and taught me the skills to begin a hobby I still love today. Through watching Sunday morning Hindu television serials together, my dad encouraged me to read the subtitles faster so I could follow along too. My dad also insisted that me and my cousin Marvin be his little assistant handyman whenever there were DIY jobs around the house. This is what occupied our weekends growing up. Shelves were built, barbecues were assembled, the garden was rid of its very, very, very many pebbles. Sometimes these DIY exploits resulted in small injuries, and I can tell you that doctors' kids don't get anesthetic for stitches done at home. My dad also took us on adventures off-roading, on long drives taking what he called the scenic route, and even taught us how to fish, though to this day I have never caught a fish and have a fear of walking down any pier where an angler may be casting a line. My dad's explanations of how hooks were removed from eyelids and mouths did not reassure me at all. During my later high school years, my dad attempted to tutor me in maths, and that was probably the one area in which he failed to convey his lesson. Later on, he had much better success with my sister Anisha, but those lessons were probably the beginning of the type of conflict that exists in so many father-daughter relationships for us. The conflict grew when my dad decided to tutor me on how to drive in real-life conditions. He would conduct these lessons in all sorts of situations, from busy days on the highway to cold, dark nights after school and work. As my dad was a hard taskmaster, I often cried bitterly during and after these lessons. But they are some of the things I am most grateful for in my life. Over the years, as I grew up into an adult, there was a lot of pain in the relationship between me and my father. I don't know if all the hurt could have been resolved between myself and a man who gave so much to the country and to all of you outside our small family. But my dad was making the effort. He was learning how to talk to me, learning how to regain my trust. We were sharing things. My dad was teaching himself to bake during lockdown and would ask me questions. The last time I saw my dad, he watched very closely as I baked a carrot cake and declared he would make one soon too. My dad still had plans for his life. He had big plans and small plans. He is beyond them now. But me, my sister Anisha, my brother Kirit, my cousins, and the very many people my dad was a father figure to, are left to wonder what we will do in his absence. Who will be there when we need help in the middle of the night? Who could we trust to drop everything to help us? Who else would stop his car in the middle of a street to scold a boy who teased us? Who will dish out questionable haircuts? Who will tell us the same story about a green mamba at the top of a mango tree he climbed at every holiday meal? I'm going to miss you, Dad. I'm going to wish that I could have introduced you to the people in my future. But I will tell them my stories about you. Thank you, Dad. There's no way to count all the things that you have taught me, but know that your lessons were absorbed and cherished.
We congratulate you, Rosa, and the rest of the family for having such a gold in the family. But we also congratulate you for being able to read right through the message that you wanted us to listen to about your dad. Stay on this brave. Thank you very much. We are in the military environment, but the other life of Dr. Ramlakan was being a doctor, a medical doctor. And therefore, the health profession, the health community has requested to have a speaker who will say one or two on the behalf of the health professionals. May I therefore invite Dr. Dilizam G to come forward and give a message on behalf of the health professionals in our country. I was informed that he has a reserve, and I'm not sure whether that reserve is well ready to do that. Dr. Max Moodley, you were indicated as a reserve of Dr. Dilizam G. You probably then should come in and do what Dr. G would have done. Okay, right. Dr. Moodley is a very good doctor. He takes instructions very well. He just wants to gather his thoughts. May I invite our veteran, who is not shy to say he hails from Newcastle, and he finished his matric at St. Oswald. They still like him there. He visits St. Oswald now and then, but sometimes he gets lazy and not visit. I'm checking on him. Can I invite the mentor, political leader, mentor of Dr. Vejay Ramlakan? You see, he responds even before I call him. He knows that I'm instructive. I'm very instructive. Baba Umek, come forward, please, and uskhabulise. We are looking forward to your mkhabulo, Baba.
Sandy, Rosa, Anisha, Kiran, the Ramlakan family, the Africa family, it's time to celebrate a life well lived, a life devoted to the service of the people. Vijay loved life. He had a lust for life, a lust which had its moments of agony and of ecstasy. He had a streak of cheekiness. At the amnesty hearing, Advocate Morane asked him a simple question. Did Vijay derive financial or material benefits from being involved in the struggle? Simple questions deserve simple answers, but not for Vejay. He replied, no. And then he added, the obvious other question is not asked of me. Did I receive financial disadvantage? That was our Vejay. Here's the thing. The program describes me as his political mentor. But let me declare here today that that kind of mischief he could not have learned from me. I have avoided, at the amnesty hearing towards the end, the chairperson turned to Vejay and said, well, I don't know whether to say thank you, General, or to say thank you, Doctor. To which Vejay, presumably with a mischief in his eye, replied, both will do, thank you. I have avoided referring to him by his medical and his military titles. I will leave it to him to take revenge on me when we meet again. Which reminds me of the bombing of Rajbansi's house. During Codessa, I witnessed Rajbansi coming from one side towards the escalator, and Vejay was approaching the escalator from the opposite side. As soon as they spotted each other, Rajbansi turned around, topi and all, and walked away from the escalator. Simultaneously, Vejay, holding himself erect, turned around smartly on his heels and marched off into the opposite direction. It was a hilarious scene, one that I will never forget, but it has always reminded me that negotiations was a serious business. It was, as we said, a terrain of struggle. I'm sometimes contrarian. I disagree that the sufferings we endured in the struggle should be seen as sacrifice. We made our choices with little regard for the price to be paid by our loved ones. It is they, our loved ones, our families, who made the sacrifices. And in that spirit, I want us to recognize Vejay and Sandy's children, Rosa, Anisha, and Kiran. You are children of the revolution who often go unacknowledged. You carry deep scars. May you never succumb to your pain. May you always walk tall. Sandy joined the underground before Vejay did. Sandy, we share your loss and your pain. We recognize the Africa and the Ramlakan families, the living and the deceased, for they stood by Vejay and Sandy. Among the living, we acknowledge Vijay's sisters, Geeta and Sharita, his brothers Anand and Suri. We salute Sandy's sister Jenny and her son Jonathan, and her brothers Herbert, Ian, Leslie, and Alma. But there are 4 comrades who warrant special mention today. We remember Comrade Andrew Zondo, who was infiltrated into the country by Operation Butterfly, although he was not part of that operation. He yielded his life to the hangman so that we may be free. Then there are 3 people who were in Operation Butterfly and deserve to be remembered. Let us remember Comrade Pilan Dwandwe, who was arrested together with Vejay and Sandy at the house. When she was released from detention, she went away to Swaziland and operated from there. And then she disappeared. It came out later that she had been kidnapped, smuggled into South Africa, tortured, and murdered in the most brutal and cowardly way. And to underscore the kind of society on whose ashes we are striving to build a caring and humane society, we remember 2 of the accused in Vijay's trial, Comrade Pumezo George James Mbiweni and Comrade Sipho Stanley Bisa. Pumezo and Sipho were acquitted in that trial, but that was not acceptable to the regime. They disappeared, and at the TRC we learnt that they were kidnapped inside the country and murdered by apartheid's hit squads. Their remains of Pumezo have been traced. Those of Sipho have not. Such are the scars that we live with. Go well, Comrade Vejay. You join the band of freedom fighters who remind us, the living, that our task is not yet done. Hambagase kawe lama kawe.
Thank you very much, our leader, Comrade Veteran. You actually have really woken up certain wounds among some of the people who worked with Vijay. You are correct that the remains of Stanley Pila has never been traced to date. Phumezonxiweni was Stanley Pila. Phumezonxiweni was laid to rest in Icala, Eastern Cape. When we visit the mother in Icala, she still cries hysterically, uncontrollable. And some of us in the Butterfly we ever think, is it still right to visit her again, because we bring the wounds. She thinks we are bringing the sun, and she actually cries uncontrollably. You may be pleased to know that in November of 2019, Comrade Vejay Ramlakan called a lot of us in the Butterfly unit and said, can we get together and allow our spouses, our partners, our mothers and brothers to write what it meant to them, our arrest and all that. And I'm pleased to say that is a task that Comrade Vejay championed us to do. It has just started. We are far from listening to our mothers, and there are not too many of our mothers who are still remaining behind. Our sisters, our wives, our brothers and sisters, we want to put a document together, what the arrest meant to them. And we are actually thankful about this. So you are actually strengthening our resolve. May I then now allow I think Max Moodley has now gathered his togetherness. If Dr. Tilizam G has not joined us, or Dr. Tilizam G come through, I thought to stop being a surgeon, cutting people. So I didn't get a story that you were in theater. So, but anyway, we allow you. Sorry for starting a bit late, a bit early, and now we almost lost your input. Thank you very much.
Apologies, Program Director, for being late. I will not venture to give any reasons why, but it was something beyond my control. Program Director, the family of Vejay Ramlakan, I recognize you, Sandy. Members and leadership of the South African National Defence Force and military veterans, members and leadership of the African National Congress present, Comrade Meg Maharaj, Comrade Zweli Mkhize, if you have arrived, I see you on the program, all protocol observed. I stand here before you today to speak as a member of the medical fraternity that Vejay Ramlakan was a part of when he was still at medical school. From humble beginnings in a working class family in Durban, Vejay rose to the heights of leadership. Leadership not only within the student movement, leadership with progressive health formations, leadership, as you've heard, within the underground structures of the African National Congress, and within the South African National Defence Force, especially within the South African military service. Vijay, as we've heard, was commander of Operation Butterfly, a program to develop an integrated political military underground command structure of condolences in Durban, and a campaign to destabilize the border regions of South Africa. My interactions with Vijay were from his days at medical school in Durban and his subsequent work as a casualty officer in the Department of Surgery at King Edward the 8th Hospital. Politically, he contributed to the growth of the mass democratic movement structures, especially with the birth of the United Democratic Front, and progressive health structures such as the National Medical and Dental Association, of which I was a part of with him and many others present here today. Vijay was a militant medical student and was detained many times whilst at medical school. He led from the front, so it was no wonder that he joined the ranks of MK together with comrades from the medical school, such as the program director, Dr. Sibongiseni Dlomo, and Dr. Mzweli Mkhize. We in the National Medical and Dental Association, NAMDA, which was founded in Durban by progressive health practitioners, did so with the intention that our members would play a role, a key role, in fact, in the most significant decade in the history of resistance to apartheid, the 80s. According to the NAMDA's founding documents, we sought to mobilize medical professionals, doctors and dentists, and allied health workers to participate not only in the fight for improved health care for all, but also in the fight against apartheid generally, so that we could convert with all other sectors in society, like the trade unions, the political groupings, churches, etc., in a common fight to displace apartheid. Our slogan, "Towards Health for All," was a precursor to what we now see is being achieved, the National Health Insurance. But at the time, we emphasized that all cannot be achieved without the dismantling of the political system of the country, and that all medical professionals and health workers generally should participate in the broader political struggle to bring about a fundamental change in the health of the people. In other words, we believed that the establishment of a just society is a precondition for optimum health. On this, Vijay was absolutely convinced, and he took it further, as you have heard, in his participation in the various initiatives in the African National Congress, including MK, to bring about a change in the system of apartheid. Hence his imprisonment on Robben Island for 12 years But it is important, I think, to remember in this regard what he said in his statement from the dock when he was, just before he was sentenced. I quote, he said, "Long before this trial started, newspapers, the radio, and television made a great fuss over the presence of two doctors amongst us." He was referring to himself and Dr. Lomo. The media, he said in his statement, expects doctors to be operating in isolation of society. No health worker, he said, with a conscience, can fail to understand how apartheid causes disease, and no health worker can ignore the cold scientific fact that apartheid is responsible for the common diseases of our country. We stand here today in memory of a dedicated and committed health worker who wholeheartedly believed in the ideology of NAMDA and the World Health definition of health, that health is not only the absence of disease, but also the presence of a balanced state of physical, emotional, and psychological well-being. Long live the spirit of the progressive struggle, and may the soul of Comrade Vejay Ramlakan rest in peace.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mji. We hope all the comments that we are getting go a long way towards assisting the family in actually beginning the process of healing. The family has received hundreds and hundreds of condolence messages, which if I were to read them, we will be here until the next morning. I'm going to paraphrase, not even read the very few that I have here with me by the consensus of the committee that was supporting this program. The very first one comes from our President Cyril Ramaphosa, that says, "My thoughts are with the General Ramlakan's family, friends, and comrades, and the former colleagues. We will remember him not only for his noble contribution in the struggle for liberation, but for many years of great work as a physician for the father of our nation, former President Nelson Mandela. May his soul rest in peace." An immediate message therefore also comes from Makaziwe Mandela, echoing what our president has just said, thanking him for the support that he gave to our country, but personally and specifically to Tata Nelson Mandela during his last days. That message comes from Dr. Carlos Massa Zabala and Marias Jacobs, both from doctors who come from Cuba. They're saying, I quote, "We were honored by the warmth and rapport with the very first comrades who welcomed us in Durban in 1992. From that moment, we felt a great pride in having such friends. Amongst them was Dr. Vejay Ramlakan's genuine and brotherly attention that was very outstanding." So the Cuban program that was started by President Nelson Mandela, President Fidel Castro, saw the arrival of the Cuban doctors into our country. Comrade Vejay was in the forefront of receiving those colleagues from Cuba. The other message comes from our former Bafana doctor, Dr. Victor Ramatisel, who actually praises the president of 1980 of the Student Representative Council. Now, I don't want to steal the thunder from Dr. Zolimkis that it may be part of, but specifically from Dr. Ramatisel says, "I had an occasion to work with Dr. Vejay Ramlakan as a Surgeon General during the 2010 FIFA World Cup and I owe him an indelible debt of gratitude for the selfless support that he provided me. As I draw towards the close, this one we decided to keep to the family the one of a butterfly unit, but this one of one of us in the butterfly unit I would wish to read. It is from Sbusiso Mazibuko. It is indeed saddening to learn about the passing away of the real cadre of the African National Congress, Dr. Vejay Ramlakan. Dr. Vejay Ramlakan was a true comrade and a member of Butterfly Unit, the military command under Lulamile Kate. He also mentioned some of our names, and the Dr. Zwelim Kize. Dr. Vejay Ramlakan's personally treated me when I was badly injured in the explosion. I would have actually assisted in drafting that sentence that it was Comrade Sandy Africa who also opened her house at 2 Nabada Road for a bleeding man who had just escaped the explosion on the 24th of October 1995 in Bluff. Comrade Sandy and Vijay treated that comrade of ours, and Comrade Vijay, later Enrique, took that gentleman out of the country to Swaziland and further on to where the ANC was. So I think it was a very special one to you, Comrade Sandy and the children, that at 2 Nabada Road you converted your house into a casualty hospital. You could not take this bleeding man to any part of our country in hospitals, and you kept that secret right through until he left the country into exile. That is why to date he still remembers the contribution you made to him. The last one I would like to read is also from Dr. Ashok Chandika, not only because he was my classmate, but he comes from Merebank. That was the last part of Comrade Vijay and Sandy here before they decided to migrate to Gauteng. They stayed at 2 Nabada Road. Then Dr. Ashok Chandika is a resident of Merebank. We owe this to the Merebank community, and he writes on behalf of the Merebank community. Our heartfelt condolence to Vijay's family on the untimely passing away of this South African hero who we have shared with us for many years. Indeed, Comrade Vijay was a true son of South Africa who served selflessly and courageously until his end. Vijay is very close to our hearts in Merebank, where as early as the school boy course of 1980, as part of the student leadership, he inspired a generation of young activists who were in their political infancy. His courage, passion, and incisive political analysis provided many of us with the skills with which to wage struggles. His incarceration on Robben Island did not dampen his spirit. He emerged from the island untainted and ready to take his place in journey to replace apartheid with a democratic dispensation. Our hearts are heavy as we bid farewell to our adopted son, Comrade Vejay Ramlakan. We are proud to have been part of your journey and honored that you were part of us. Your lessons and your example will remain with us for many generations. Writing on behalf of the Merebank community, Dr. Ashok Chandika. I am now going to invite Dr. Ricky Naidu, another terrorist that took this comrade out of the country, who's very brave, thin as he is, to do a obituary that we have. An obituary that we have is relatively long, so I will not be disappointed if Comrade Maharaj and those of his age may sit down during the course of the reading of the obituary. But I'm not saying anything, Comrade Maharaj, about your age. I'm just being an observant doctor. So may I then invite you, as we get Comrade Ricky Naidu to come closer to read the obituary, that we stand, if you can, and halfway, if you cannot stand, I will understand. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Program Director. Former Surgeon General Vejay Ramlakan, DMG, MMS, MMB, Order of the Knights of St. John, passed away on the 27th of August 2020 from a suspected heart attack. He was 62 years old at the time. Lieutenant General Vejay Ramlakan, a consummate soldier and freedom fighter, headed the South African Military Health Services from 2005 to 2013 and was later appointed as Chief of Corporate Services prior to his retirement in 2015. Dr. Ramlakan served the dual professions he had chosen with absolute dedication, that of a military commander and strategist, as well as that of a medical doctor. Born on the 28th of September 1957, Vejay Ramlakan came from a family of 8 children that shared a loving home with their parents in Cater Manor, Durban. When the area was declared white, the family was forcibly moved to the then newly built apartheid township of Chatsworth outside Durban. Noting such pervasive injustices from early in childhood and into his medical career, that while black public hospitals were overflowing, white designated hospitals stood virtually empty, only served to intensify his struggle for a just and equitable South Africa. At university, initially at the University of Durban Westville, and later at the University of Natal Medical School, Vejay Ramlakan immersed himself in the struggle for freedom, serving on the Medical Students Representative Council from 1979 to 1980. Whilst he was still a medical student, he joined Umkhonto weSizwe as an underground operative in 1997, receiving military training in South Africa and neighboring Swaziland. Qualifying as a medical doctor in 1980, he initially worked in the casualty department at King Edward VIII Hospital. During this period, he also served as Vice President and General Secretary of the Natal Health Workers Association. He was also involved in the founding of the United Democratic Front in 1983 and was a member of the Area Political Military Committee of MK. He always recognized that for the struggle to be won, the involvement of communities was critical to this objective. In 1985, he was part of Operation Butterfly, a joint internal and external political military structure to coordinate the underground of the African National Congress. It targeted identified persons, businesses, and institutions that were deemed collaborators or supporters of the apartheid government. At his trial in 1986, General Ramlakan said that as a doctor, his first consideration and duty was to his patients. He would not permit considerations of religion, race, politics, or social standing to interfere with this mission. He declared, I quote, "I am no starstruck idealist, pipe dreamer, or angry young man. My motivations have been based on the scientific study of our society. No sentence is going to reform or rehabilitate me. No further repression is going to reform or rehabilitate our oppressed community. No sentence, however severe, is going to serve as a deterrent to any of us. Whatever form the sentence takes, there will always be more fighters to sentence until we achieve our final victory, until the people do government," close quotes. He took this fearless attitude, unyielding pursuit of excellence, and unwavering ambition into all the roles entrusted to him in the democratic South Africa. He had a remarkable insight into identifying potential among young leaders and then inspiring the best out of them. In sentencing the freedom fighters at the trial, Judge Thirian said he took into consideration that General Ramlakan had warned his trainees to be careful not to injure anyone. For his actions, General Ramlakan and 8 other members of Operation Butterfly were sentenced to periods of up to 12 years on Robben Island. Upon their release in 1985, the late comrade Chris Hani himself was there to welcome them. At the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in 2000, General Ramlakan took responsibility for actions that could have resulted in damages to property or injuries to persons that could have been involved in guerrilla attacks. His defense is captured in the following extracts from his statements. I quote, "I decided to involve myself in the struggle against apartheid and to do all that was within my power to overthrow the apartheid regime in 1976. I decided to take up arms and join Umkhonto we Sizwe as the armed wing of the African National Congress in the furtherance of that aim." Close quotes. In 2011, General Ramlakan presented this conundrum of 2 apparent conflicting professions, that of a soldier, which can involve the taking of life, and that of being a medical doctor, which is to serve and heal to the newly graduated medical specialists at the College of Medicine. The highlight of his distinguished career in the military was to serve as Surgeon General. His mission in this position was to provide world-class clinical care. Recognizing that health was dependent on many social and other drivers of health, General Ramlakan introduced policies aimed at improving physical health, strengthened educational programs internally as well as with the institutes of higher learning, promoting and encouraging military health research. In the growing boom of the HIV and AIDS pandemic in the mid-2000s, he brought together world experts, including South Africa's best, at the first Military Health HIV conference, charting a way forward for specialized care for military health workers affected by HIV. When the national strikes affected health delivery at public hospitals in 2007 and 2009, General Ramlakan deployed his military doctors to staff the public facilities. These efforts received great acclaim at the time. For the 2010 FIFA World Cup, General Ramlakan was a critical member of the National Joint Operations Center in terms of medical operations during the event. General Ramlakan did not tolerate fools lightly. He read widely on many subjects and never attended any formal meeting without prior research and preparation. In order to ensure that history was not a single narrative of the former apartheid government, General Ramlakan led a team to document this history of military health that included the contributions of liberation movements. This culminated in a lengthy book, The Fourth Dimension, The History of Military Health in South Africa. His personal written reflections on the father of the nation, Nelson Mandela, Mandela's last years, later voluntarily withdrawn, had a mixed reception. And at the time of his death, he was robustly defending the publication of the book at the Health Professionals Council of South Africa. One of his recent personal projects was to document a biographical narrative detailing the history of each of the 3,000 ex-political prisoners who were on Robben Island. While he worked hard in recent years to consolidate the database, the project remains one of his many unrealized ambitions. For his unfailing contribution to the health and welfare of our country and the freedom of our people, we salute and honor the memory of Lieutenant General Vejay Ramlakan, a father, a brother, a son of the soil, a comrade, a friend, and a true patriot. Hamba Gasle Mkonto.
We can be seated. Thank you. We'd like to thank the family, those who really assisted us with the early part of this obituary, the military, the ANC, the ex-political prisoners, the medical fraternity, for putting together such a comprehensive but not complete life of this giant. It really gives us just a snapshot of who this brave man was. There is a gentleman who's a three-in-one in the sense that he's a member of the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress. He is a medical doctor. He also is one of our commanders in the butterfly unit. So he will pick and choose which part of that he emphasizes in his contribution. I will also, because he was once my leader as a premier, I'll give him a bit of 2 minutes extra from what he has actually prepared. Wangiphatha kahle. Mandla.
Okay, thank you. Our program director, Brigadier General Sibongiseni Dlomo, Minister for Defense and Military Veterans, Honorable Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngqagula, our stalwart and veteran of our struggle, Comrade Mek Maharaj, and other veterans, current and former members of the National and Provincial Executive Committees, and leaders of the African National Congress and Alliance at all levels, the Acting Chief of the South African National Defence Force and Acting Surgeon General of the South African Military Health Services, generals, senior officers, non-commissioned officers and members of the South African National Defence Force, Comrade Diliza Mchi, and other activists and leaders of our struggle for freedom, members of Umkhonto weSizwe, military veterans associations, including former commanders and commissars, and all ex-combatants of Umkhonto weSizwe, and the ex-political prisoners. The Ramlakan family, his children, his siblings, and all relatives, friends, and comrades, members of the media, and fellow South Africans. Today, South Africa bids farewell to a brave warrior of our times, Lieutenant General Vejay Ramlakan. He was popularly known simply as Vijay, Comrade Vijay, for his entire life. As all of those excuse me, as all of those who knew him from his young age only remember him as an activist, but he was a father, he was a son, he was a husband, he was an uncle, he was a friend, he was a comrade, he was a leader and a mentor who meant a lot to those that knew him closely, a remarkable man who left a mark on all our hearts. Before I proceed also, may I be allowed to pay tribute to Comrade Sandy for your contribution as an operative in your own right and the sacrifices that we went through. I still remember that you were a young girl from Sydenham High School when we actually first met you, and I do understand from that time on that we've been part of the struggle, and in fact you were working with Comrade Vijay as comrades, not just that it happened because you were near him. So we pay tribute to you and your family for bringing up all the children and the suffering that all of you have gone through. May you find peace and healing. You are our heroes. For me and many other colleagues, this marks the end of a journey we have traversed, spanning over 40 years as young activists, student leaders, military combatants, policy makers and transformation, political leaders in the democratic South Africa. Comrade Vijay was a patriot who loved his country and vowed never to rest until his people are freed from apartheid slavery. When called upon to serve his people, he stepped to the fore. When volunteers and activists were required for grassroots mobilization, he was amongst the first to be counted. For him, no task was a burden and no sacrifice was too high. For he loved his people, even as he understood that his call to duty carried a risk on his own life. He had chosen a lonely life in which he would never get a rest. This was the life of many youth of his time that the many youth of his time chose. It was not their design, but it was the only option. Who would stand and countenance the oppression and brutal suppression of our human rights of a people dispossessed of their land, subjugated by force and treated as serfs, as hewers of wood and drawers of water, their children denied equal and quality education, and destined to die of diseases of hunger and underdevelopment. Comrade Vijay joined many youth who in 1976 took to the streets to protest against inferior education. He was part of those students that had to take up the fight to prevent the closure of the medical school and to create a Bantustan-only university. He was amongst those that faced those batons and also had to dodge those gnarling Alsatians and dodge the bullets of the apartheid police. As part of the University of Natal Black Section, as we called it, we actually turned and transformed the entire university into a nest for incubating freedom fighters. So it was not unusual to find many people who belong to various cells of Umkhonto weSizwe or the ANC underground. The banning of the Black Consciousness Movement, the assassination of Steve Biko, all of these radicalized the students, and he was at that time the president of the leader, he was a part of the leadership of the Students' Representative Council, serving as a president on his last years. And he converted all resources available and made them available to fight the campaigns of our political struggle outside the university. He was a fierce critic of the tricameral parliament. You have heard the story from Comrade Mac, how him and Amichan Rajpansi didn't see eye to eye. It comes from that. But he turned the university into the base for non-collaboration, producing leaflets and mobilizing students to go out and campaign for a boycott of the vote. And the students at the time had a culture of solidarity and working together with the workers and community struggles, and particularly went all out to support those struggles for better housing conditions under the Durban Housing Action Committee, and also working with those other programs, Workers' Day celebration, Women's Rights, Women's Day celebration, and so on. He was always in the forefront, and this created a whole scene where a lot of attention was paid by this special branch. There was a lot of work done to inspire and mobilize students in various colleges and universities and in the high schools around Durban. And this we did as part of our students' work, where we used to go out to teach them maths and science and of course politics. So as medical students, it had been made very clear, I think Dr. Dilizamchi has put it very well, that the first step of improving quality of life of our people is to rebel against the national oppression and racial discrimination and overthrow the apartheid regime and ensure that our people have got a right to vote for the government of their choice. And that's the beginning of good health. And that is what brought all of us to start imagining equal health for all, and this was the basis of the national health insurance from those days as young students and activists, where we're looking at access to affordable quality of health care for all, irrespective of individuals' ability to pay or membership of the medical aid. This is an ideal that we have to continue to fight, because that was one of our fundamental beliefs as an expression of equality as in a free democratic dispensation. So Comrade Vijay believed in universal health coverage, that it will be achieved in our lifetime. It therefore remains for all of us who are here today to ensure that in our lifetime it still is achieved, even though he has left. Comrade Vijay qualified as a doctor and continued to practice medicine as a devoted doctor who worked closely and respected all the people that he worked with. But at the same time, during those days, when we had serious suppression, particularly the assassination of various leaders such as Griffiths Mxenge, Victoria Mxenge, and a number of MK combatants who were being executed, at that point, our people had no voice and the repression was extreme. That is the point at which many of our students were actually recruited into the underground. And Comrade Vijay was amongst those, but at the same time working with a number of other mass organizations guided, for example, by the Natal Indian Congress with various stalwarts such as Mewaram Kopin, George Supersad, Paul Davids, M.D. Naidu, and the Release Mandela campaign led by Archie Kumete, other unions, SAU, for SATU unions, all of this ultimately creating the whole big front, broad front, which UDF was ultimately formed of. He was amongst those who represented the health sector there, the NAMDA and the National Health Association. But at the same time, several waves of MK units were actually operating in the country, and each time one unit was wiped out, arrested, a new one would be brought into the country. At that point, the ANC's political and military operations had become integrated, and therefore in 1985, a new command was installed under Comrade Sihle Mbongwa, Kevin Koboshiane, and a few other comrades who had been brought into the country to assist, working with Comrade Vijay, Comrade Lulamile Kate, Comrades Bungseni Dlomo, and a number of other comrades who are too many to mention. And then linked to the Swaziland side were also other comrades such as Comrade Raymond Lala, who are not able to be here, Comrade Terence Tryon, and other comrades, particularly under the leadership of Commander Jabungwenye, was called Tamizulu, and a few others since the assassination of Comrade Mtukuma and Zwelinyanda were in charge of the Natal machinery at the time. And in that whole overall command was led by the chairperson, who is Comrade Ibrahim. Unfortunately, he is also a bereavement and could not be here. He is the one by right who should be here, standing here, because he's the one who led us all. This was a butterfly operation that became an extensive operation in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, not only in Durban, in suburbs and townships and rural areas, but also moved up into Maritzburg and some of the towns in Maritzburg. Comrade Sibongiseni has read the tribute from Comrade Buma Zibuko, who survived in the bomb blast where Comrade Zinto Cele had died. who described how Comrade Vijay and Comrade Sandy tended his wounds when in fact there were helicopters hovering above looking for him and sending him more information. Whoever finds him must actually turn him over to the police. Many military activities were conducted, but eventually some of the units were uncovered, and therefore the arrest happened. As you have heard, the accused number one, Comrade Tutup Telezi, who was ultimately called by the media the pregnant bomber because she was arrested when in fact she was carrying her first baby. And of course, another young doctor who had not done internship, instead he went straight to prison without going through to do internship. One of the tragedies of that trial was the fact that there was a lot of documentation that had actually been left in Mozambique that came back and was part of the trial, which actually showed there was a huge challenge, infiltration at the higher levels. Comrade Merkez eloquently pointed out a number of other brave heroes, such as Comrade Pila Posha Ndandwe, Pume Zungweni, Stanley Pila, and we have heard we still have not only this Comrade Pila, but a few other comrades whose bodies we still have not identified today, long after they died, and everything has been trying to try and find all of this. And Comrade Zondo was the one who actually saved the entire command from execution, definite execution, because the apartheid police came over and said to him, "We found your commanders, just give us a statement, we'll release you and they'll come in." And he said, "No, I've been already charged, I'm sentenced, and my comrades will not come because of me, and let the struggle continue." And that's the kind of bravery of the comrades that we're talking about. Of course, then it started, the long journey to Robben Island started with Comrade Vijay and the other comrades. Comrade Sbongiseni was talking the other day about how even Comrade Lulamile Tlate, everything had been done, in fact, that they were hoping that they've got someone who's going to nail everybody, and he stood across and walked in and looked at the comrades and said, "Well, these are my comrades, comrades don't betray each other." And then he was sentenced for refusing to testify. Another person who came in and said, these are the ones that we worked with. Comrade Tlate actually gave him a huge blow, and then as he collapsed, he was given 5 years, and he went out without being without giving evidence. He was given his own 5 years. Later on, they were trying to get the same comrades to turn against him. This is how treacherous this environment was at that time. But Comrade Vijay, as he went into Robben Island, even his passion as a doctor was never missed, and he was overawed to be in the midst in the midst of all these icons that we have only sang about and only mouth slogans about, such as President Mandela and so on. And he was inspired by their sincerity and the principled leadership of Oliver Tambo, Ahmed Kathrada, and all others. And as he returned back, we've heard how he went out and took responsibility with the TRC, and he continued to work on the military, rising up to the head of South African Military Health Services. And in that process, he was the head, the Surgeon General. I recall this book when he was doing research on this book, where he was saying, but our story must be told. And the story was, when in fact there was a military conscription and white doctors were wearing uniform and working in the hospitals, we were also soldiers from another army working with the same ones, but no one knew that we were actually two sets of armies amongst the doctors serving our patients. It was said when in Pietermaritzburg, after the blast in Maseru, the doctors, the black doctors went and did a memorial service. On the other side, the white doctors put up a braai to celebrate the victory. But nothing gave Vijay as much joy and a sense of humility as the Surgeon General than to take charge of the health of the father of our nation, assisted by an able team of about 22 physicians, some of whom were part of the groups that we had actually grown up with and trained together. And of course, they were loyal to the end, and he kept updating us about the progress and how things were going on. Similarly, nothing has given him so much pain as the misunderstanding that arose with the writing of the book which he published, and how we wish that that matter could have been settled amicably. He was in the struggle for the long haul. He was not driven by greed or self-interest. and he never got consumed by factional tendencies that have ravaged our movement to make it barely recognizable. Leaders need to all be reminded that the ANC is not merely a passport to high office or self-enrichment, but it was a movement created for all our people as an instrument for liberation from oppression. Comrade Vijay leaves us at a time when our country is facing several crises that require honest and principled leadership that will confront challenges with courage without seeking popularity. Our ideal for freedom remains a dream until we have eradicated poverty, inequality, unemployment, and uprooted corruption. We have a challenge to eliminate crime and free our women from gender-based violence and femicides, in which many women lose their lives in the hands of the men that they once trusted. We need to stand up together and say not in our name. We bid him farewell under the constraint restrictions imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic. Whilst we embrace the optimism of a receding surge, we mourn the lives of those who have been lost in the invisible enemy. We salute all those dedicated health workers who have remained committed to the service of our nation during the time when we needed a combination of skills of health workers and soldiers in the forefront. As minister and as part of government, we do undertake to do everything in our power to protect all our health workers. On his passing, let us remind those in positions of power that the struggle cannot be over until we entrench good governance, eliminate corruption, achieve true non-racialism, non-sexism, equality, and justice prevails. This is what Comrade Lieutenant General Ramlakan dedicated his life to. Comrade Vijay was a well-rounded cadre. He was articulate, always managed to simplify a difficult concept to win confidence. In his entire life, he believed in non-racialism. He was completely unaware of what race he belonged to. He was a true African who believed in freedom, equality, unity, and democracy for all. He could be very naughty too. When the students were tired of attending meetings because of boycotts, he just went up and put up big posters there that says, sex, meeting, and then puts up a venue, and then all the students rushed there, but they didn't want to attend meeting, and all of a sudden, only to discover that no, the struggle continues, the boycott continues. He was a disciplined soldier. We have lost a humble servant of our people, a courageous soldier who fought gallantly and never betrayed our cause, but remained steadfast and loyal until his last breath. We salute you, Commander. You fought a good fight. Your mission is accomplished. We dip our revolutionary banner to honor you for your bravery and thank you for the services and the leadership. Soldiers never grieve and never mourn, for death is a fulfillment of a lifelong vow whose encounter is always expected. Let us pick up the spear and surge forward to battle. In remembrance of comrades, I'd like to share a short poem by Welterman Seri, and I want to say this: fallen warriors gone too soon, the best, the brave, the bold, and the bright. Like the comet thrust from the skies on a late summer night, men who's taken up the cause, giving us no less than their all. On behalf of the motherland, they have paid the ultimate price. We acknowledge now their families in memories of their sacrifice and of their story. Time will tell, for they shall be remembered well. And in the language of our ancestral warriors, we will say to you, "Uyadela wena usulapho." The struggle continues, alita continue. On behalf of the African National Congress, the comrades, fellow ex-combatants, we wish to convey our deepest condolences to his family, particularly the children, Rosa, Anisha, Kiran, Masana, and the rest of the family, Anand, the siblings, Comrade Sandy, Comrade Charlotte, the community of Merebank, and all those who are associated with him. We thank you for giving him to the nation to serve. He has served us well, and for that we have to thank you. May his soul rest in peace. Hamba kahle mkhonto. Amandla.
Dr. Perikis Nasami please approach the podium. I would wish that we could be able to say one day, Ricky Naidu, where are the recordings of that proceedings of the funeral of Lieutenant General Ramlakan, and you will be able to get them for us, because there is so much that needs to be digested and be prepared for our great-grandchildren. I now invite one of the terrorists that come from Merebank, who was actually not at the right time, at the right spot, at a particular time, and therefore many terrorists were arrested because of him, to give a vote of thanks. I asked as a program, why a vote of thanks now? They told me military way is done this way. So they were reminding me, because I've left the military, I'm a reserve there, so some of the things I miss out. What is going to unfold hereafter will be a bit of military work and not civilian program. So this is a time, this is the reason why we are inviting Dr. Perikis Nasam now to make a vote of thanks at this juncture. Yes.
Thank you, Program Director, Dr. Dlomo. All protocol observed. Comrade Zweli, there is an empty seat at the table. If you recall our days at the MSRC and the boisterous voice, Dudu is also here, our secretary, full-time secretary. There's an empty seat at the table. Comrade Dlomo, and on behalf of the families, the Ramlakan family, the Africa family, the Mangalana family, thank you for affording me this privilege of actually giving the vote of thanks. We appreciate firstly the organizing committee led by Comrade Zweli Mkhize, the Minister of Health, and a member of the NEC of the African National Congress, our beloved movement, and the Deputy General Secretary, Jesse Duarte. We also must appreciate the support of Lutuli House, led by the General Manager, Phoebe Potgieter, and the back office team. We actually had a very brilliant memorial service. Notwithstanding the COVID-19, really appreciated the fact that comrades from the professional groupings, the political process, and Operation Butterfly gave a brilliant input on Wednesday night. We also want to appreciate the colleagues within the Operation Butterfly, some of us, Smongseni, Dudu, Ricky, and other comrades that were very close to the family during this time, in terms of supporting them also as they went about in terms of preparation for this funeral service. We must appreciate the Minister of Defense and Military Veterans in terms of the conduct of the National Defense Force, and particularly the Military Health Service, for assisting with this funeral service. What a send-off for a great leader of our country who truly believed in a non-racial, democratic South Africa. So thanks, Minister, for your support through the Acting Chief of the Defense Force, and especially the memorial service also on Wednesday morning that portrayed his contribution to the integration of the armed forces and ultimately rising through the ranks of military health. So we appreciate that. This funeral service comes with full military honors, and we appreciate the fact that the Minister of Defense and Military Veterans is present, and especially the leadership of the South African National Defense Force and Military Health Services. We wish to also appreciate the Premier and the leadership of the African National Congress in the province of KwaZulu-Natal for hosting us, and especially the eThekwini Metro and the acting city manager and staff, including the Metro Police, for the support they have given us in terms of conducting this ceremony from the morning with the dignity that Vejay Ramlakan deserved. Thanks to the comrades who actually spoke at this funeral service, Comrade Deliza Mg, who was actually part of our leadership, himself having gone through a lot. We first met Deliza while he was still serving orders that he couldn't meet with more than 2 people at a time, the banning orders. As a leader at that stage, who then helped us in terms of the leadership of the progressive health struggles, and for your work also that you did with Vijay and some of us in terms of surgery. Comrade Mac Maharaj, we can always salute you, comrade. Because not only did you help us with Butterfly, with Comrade Hebe, but also subsequently with Operation Vola. These were pioneering underground operations in the country, notwithstanding other comrades in the Western Cape, in other parts of the country, that actually helped to unify peasants, workers, and professionals in one unified movement, but also showed the non-racial nature of our country, and especially the military wing of the African National Congress. We salute you, Comrade Mac Maharaj. I need to conclude with saying that Vijay went to Robben Island wanting to do surgery. Maybe at that point of our struggle, you needed surgeons, as you know from Comrade Sibusiso Mazibuku, who spoke about his injuries from the Grosvenor school bombing. So we needed comrades with surgical skills. When Vijay came back from Robben Island, he entered public health. And as Comrade Dilizam Ji has pointed out, he then was looking at the health for all mantra of a better health system for all South Africans. And we thank comrades like Zweli Mkhize, who currently are taking up the cudgels in the Ministry of Health, and Comrade Lomo, who also is heading the Portfolio Committee on Health in the National Assembly. We want to thank FBOB for the dignity in which they supported us, and especially transporting Vijay's body from Johannesburg to Durban. So let me conclude with a statement from Che Guevara. Comrade Max Modley went and sent in a quote from Che Guevara, himself a medical doctor and very important in the early phases of the Cuban Revolution. I quote from Che Guevara: "A true revolutionary is guided by a great feeling of love. It is impossible to think of a genuine revolutionary lacking this quality." Vijay embodied that: humility, love, respect, but at the same time, strong-headedness and bravery. I also quote, "If you tremble, as Che Guevara says, with indignation at every injustice, then you are a comrade of mine." There will be an empty seat at the table. May his soul rest in peace. And Comrade Lomo, Comrade Ramlakan, is no more with us. To the members of Operation Butterfly, we did not know each and every one of us, but our units were intact. And we thank some of you for protecting us, because we also might have joined you on Robben Island. We also might have been killed by the apartheid state repression machinery, as we heard of Pila and some of the other comrades. Comrade Zweli had to go into exile with Comrade Ray Bell and some other comrades. So we all had to scatter, but we regrouped. And today, we do have, under difficult circumstances, a non-racial, democratic South Africa with the freedom to choose our future. Amandla.
Okay, thank you very much, Comrade Bering. We hope that you recover. I could tell the whole week long that you were one of us who was in deep, deep pain. Some of us tried to cry and actually publicly trying to avoid it so that people could think that we are strong when we are not. But thanks for acknowledging that we saved you. We went to prison and saved you. So you owe us big time. Whenever we come and ask for these favors, mustn't forget that you owe us a lot. May I invite Lieutenant General Mapanya on behalf of the Chief of the SANDF, who also has a message and has already been thanked for actually being here and organizing right through until we are here. May I invite you, Lieutenant General, to have your condolence message to the family and to all the mourners.
Program Director, Brigadier General Lomo, allow me to acknowledge the Honorable Minister of Defense and Military Veterans, the Honorable Minister of Health, the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal Province in absentia, members of the National Executive Committee and the PEC of the African National Congress, the entire leadership of the Tripartite Alliance present, the stalwart Ubabamek Maharaj, and all veterans, generals, officers, warrant officers, non-commissioned officers, comrades, friends, and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, allow me on behalf of the Chief of the South African National Defence Force, General Solishoke, who couldn't be here, to convey our sincere condolences to the family. I want to say that isizwe silahlekela. Lucky are those who knew Vijay, those who can count themselves as his comrades, as his friends, as his colleagues, for they have imbibed in the wisdom and intellect of this humble giant. Lieutenant General Vejay Ramlakan did not choose to join the military as a career, but he happened to be a product of the Stern University of mass struggle and the life experience of the exploited and downtrodden masses, workers and peasants of our country, as Oliver Reginald Tambo once said. Vijay was amongst the many South Africans who, at the time of brutal oppression, when the nation was left with only two choices, either to submit or to fight, had to opt for the latter and joined the ranks of Umkhonto Wesizwe. Lieutenant General Ramlakan's passion for the love of the people became the defining narrative of his life, his dreams, and his aspirations. These are the dreams that were carved on the fundamental principles of the people's struggle, that were premised on the uplifting of the quality of life of all South Africans, especially the poor. These are the dreams that spurred him to join Umkhonto Wesizwe and subsequently to become a member of the South African National Defence Force. It was at that time when becoming a member of MK leaves you with two choices. You were either to be incarcerated or to die. Allow me to add just one piece in the sophisticated life puzzle of Lieutenant General Ramlakan. A very brief moment of his life in the South African National Defence Force without repeating what was said in the obituary. He served as the Inspector General of the Department of Defense, where he received the International ISO 9001 in 2000 award. This was for the first time ever that this prestigious award was given to a South African government entity. Lieutenant General Ramlakan later served as SG. It is during this period that he led the medical fraternity in defense, supporting and mitigating the impact of the labor action in public health, both in 2007 and 2009, to ensure the continuation of essential health services during this labor unrest. As Sergeant General in the South African National Defence Force, General Ramlakan became intimately involved with the medical care of our former Commander-in-Chief, as it was said by the Honorable Minister of Health in Dr. Nelson Mandela. And it is for this action that General Ramlakan was issued with the Mandela Mandela Medal in gold. He later moved on to serve as Chief Corporate Staff. This is the post that currently had been transformed to be the Chief of Staff, more so to be like the second in command and responsible for all activities of the defense headquarters. All these times, he was a member of the Military Command Council, the highest decision-making body of the South African National Defence Force. Serving with him in the Military Command Council was a great pleasure. He would from time to time challenge in a very disciplined manner any point of view which he found not to be in pursuit of his passion, that is, of excellence and good governance in the South African National Defence Force. Wherever he is, as we look at his remains in front of us, Vijay is having that unassuming smile, saying, as Nikolai Ostrovsky once said, I quote, "All my life, all my strength were given to the finest cause in the world, the fight for the liberation of mankind." Close quote. Vijay has lived his life to the fullest. We in the South African National Defence Force will remain resolute and emulate him. We will continue to fight against this double-barreled, invisible enemy facing our country today, the COVID-19 and the gender-based violence pandemic. Together, we urge all our people, all our soldiers, to remain steadfast and to have a behavioral change to mitigate for the potential upsurge. In that way, we will be emulating the giant lying before us. As the sun rises and sets, like all patriots, we shall always remember him in the same spirit and words of the great Cuban poet Horta Ruiz, in that souls intersect, greetings and kisses, and on all graves of the noble fallen, flowers burst open and their bones sing. To the entire Ramlakan family and the Africa family, both all the biological, political, military, and former political prisoners and professionals, as part and parcel of his family, let us all accept the inevitable truth that death is the ultimate end of life. Mdedeleni ayopumla. Let us all allow him to join the great heroes of our country, like Abo Baba Lutuli, Abo Mabida, Abo Kotane, Tambo, Abo Mandela, Hani, and many, many others. His legacy will live forever. Rest in peace. Lala kahle kawe lamakau. The South African National Defence Force salutes you. Thank you.
Siyabonga kakhulu General Maphanya. I now need to report you to the minister before she joins us on the podium, and unfortunately we have no way of replying now. Minister, I'm not sure about the other arms of formation in the SANDF, but I could speak for myself in SAMS. That Dr. Zweli Mkhize is a SAMS member in reserve. I'm also one. So we don't get call-ups. And therefore, if there's any mistake that I did in performing my duties there, it's because I have not seen a sergeant major for at least the past year. Someone who must actually remind me as a general how to behave, how to do this and the other. And I think there could be some value add we could also receive by associating ourselves with the army. Please look into that, General Maphanya, that before the end of 2021 I must get a call-up. I will request the Speaker in the National Assembly, even just 2 days, to come and join and work with you. It now gives me great pleasure to make this announcement as I invite the Minister that from now, this is my last part to be here, because after the Minister, we are going to have the Chaplain General, Brigadier General Jamangile, who will then take us right through outside this hall. I will not come back here because the military command will come in that situation. Our Minister is a proud member from Condolence. She leads this department as a military, a minister of the soldiers that she led. She is none other than Comrade Onosviwe Mapisa Ngakula. I now invite you, Comrade Minister, to come and address us, and we are very delighted that we are here. We are very glad that we are here as part of us.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Thank you, Brigadier General Long. Allow me to to acknowledge the presence of the Minister of Health, a man who really should be very exhausted by now. I don't know how he survives this, because many of us are so tired. It's just unbelievable. The period of COVID has really challenged a number of our people. Program Director, allow me to pay my respects to Comrade Sandy and the children. To Ndade Maharaj, I'm happy to see you, Comrade Mac. But it's just unbelievable that we don't see you around. We just see you once in a while on TV doing some interview. We're so used to having you amongst us. It's good to see you. The family of General Vejay, members of the profession which he committed himself to. I saw Obutiliza, and I was very happy, very excited, but I realized that because I was wearing a mask, he didn't see me. And I must say that I was touched by the words of the comrade and the doctor who gave a vote of thanks. I think this gathering, Comrade Vejay, has brought together all your comrades, and the pain that we are feeling is palpable. Acting Chief Gerald Mapwanya, Sergeant General Acting, now your surnames, the two of you, General Mapwanya and Mapaha. Ex-political prisoners who are here, who served with Comrade Vejay. I saw Comrade Mpo, at some point Comrade Mpo Masemula, and all those who served in the underground with Comrade Vejay. Before I make my speech, very brief, I must say, I should say one of the things which really deeply touched me, Minister, and 2-3 other speakers were here, is the recognition which you gave to Sandy, the acknowledgement of the role she played, not as a partner, but as an individual, as a woman who was courageous and brave enough to be there, and today she's counted amongst those who defeated this regime. I'm very happy about it. I'm very touched by that, because most of the time, when you are associated with a politician, you're like an appendage. People see you as an appendage of so-and-so, and not as a person who contributed in the struggle, young as you were, in your own right. Fellow mourners, it was just a week ago, on the evening of the 27th of August 2020, during our session with the Portfolio Committee on Defense and Military Veterans, that I received a WhatsApp message from Comrade Jesse informing me about the passing of Lieutenant General Vejay. Now, you will not imagine the kind of confusion I was in, because the Portfolio Committee was expecting me to answer questions which they had for me, and I was trying to think around and worrying about how do I convey this to other comrades, but also to those who serve in the Portfolio Committee. I must say that I was left with trepidation, but nevertheless had to continue with the session. I deliberately mentioned this even as the general had left service just over 5 years ago. Regardless, it was the contribution he had made in the forging of our democracy and building the new defense establishment that made us stand back and remain shocked that one so young and who still had so much to give to our country had left us suddenly. Many a tribute has been made about the officer and the comrade lying before us. The general, to those who knew him in the service and even in his general life and demeanor, was steadfast, decisive, and stuck to his convictions. If he believed what he was to pursue was correct, nothing, absolutely nothing, could divert him from that goal. Even if you think it is wrong, if Vejay decides that what he wants to do is the right thing, then he will simply move on and he will do it. You, politician, you'll remain there and you can give political answers. That's Vejay. He integrated into the newly formed South African National Defence Force and straight into the South African Military Services, as it was then known, and later to what it is today, the SAMS, South African Military Health Services. Now, starting off integrating as a brigadier in the South African Military Services, he rose to be given the responsibilities not only within the South African Military Health Services, but across the South African National Defence Force, eventually landing the post of the most senior officer within the South African Military Health Services, the Surgeon General, which is a 3-star general officer. He could not have been better prepared with the various posts held, both within SAMS and in the corporate South African National Defence Force and the Department of Defence at large. There are some of those which were mentioned by General Mapwanya, but allow me to mention that one of the posts he held cemented what he had already learned whilst he was the Inspector General. For learn he did as he immersed himself into military and professional courses to enhance his knowledge in the auditing field, governance, accountability, leading to the audit committee placing more reliance on the internal audit function due to the work he was doing and ensuring that systems of control and accountability are in place. I'm mentioning this deliberately so, as there is a current focus by government to ensure that there's accountability in the manner in which we spend the monies, the taxpayers' money, and now in particular as it relates to expenditure on dealing with COVID-19. As the General Officer Commander of the Area Military Health of the South African Military Health Services, not only was he a soldier but also a medical doctor, whose medical experience exposed him to the health needs not only of our troops but those of ordinary citizens. He contributed immensely to the policies and health strategies and structures of the South African National Defence Force through the South African Military Health Services. Well, it has been mentioned that his leadership and skills were further proven when he led Operation Bata, which saw the South African Military Health Services take over 70 health facilities in the country during a crippling health practitioner strike for almost a month. That was a huge responsibility that was placed on Vijay's shoulders. A responsibility he carried with such professionalism and efficiency. The SANDF was able to man those health facilities throughout the country and provided medical attention to the sick and vulnerable. That was not small feat that showed how professional he was in the field of medicine and on how to run a health facility. This showed the other side of him and of being a caring soldier who took the lives and health of not only soldiers but that of the public at large. Now, there's one thing which I must say about Vijay. He was not the kind of person who take things and people for granted. You know, we all meet, we have different responsibilities, and I do not remember once Vijay relating with me as, hey, no Siviwe this, hey, no Siviwe that. But he knew who I was, he knew where I come from, he knew I was his comrade, but there was a relationship of mutual respect. Now, Vijay, even if he was going to differ with you on a matter, he would find sometimes rather sarcastic, but he would just find a way of making you feel good about what you are about to do, even though he'll say, I differ with you. I don't think this is the route to go, my minister, because I arrived just a year before he retired. However, if this is what you want, full force, I'm behind you, I'll support you. There was a time when there was a bit of a challenge in 2013 where there were a lot of articles in the media that doctors were exiting the South African Military Health Services. And I kept on asking and expecting answers, and I could not get answers. And people kept on sending me articles, even from Afrikaans papers, doctors are leaving. But what troubled me was that the doctors were not leaving because they wanted to go for greener pastures and make money. They were moving from the Department of Defense, from SAMS, through to the Department of Health. And that's what was making me very upset. So I decided to put together a team led by Professor Moghalepuru and other doctors. And I said, please help, just investigate what is this. And it took them about 6 months to do this work. Now Vijay, in his own way, when I wanted to do this, he wasn't sure. He wasn't in the department in SAMS at the time. He was in the office of the chief. He wasn't sure if that was the correct route to take. But he nonetheless said, I commit to give you all the support which you need. But guess what? When we subsequently received that report, the findings and the recommendations which were contained in the report, and when we shared those, he was very quick to say, yeah, I knew this one would come out. I knew that one would. In a very, not in an apologetic manner, not in a patronizing manner, but he took responsibility. Well, Minister, I knew this one would come out. I knew that one would come out. But at the time, remember, he wasn't the Surgeon General anymore. I found that very, very interesting about him. Now, I would like to share a bit. I've not read Vijay's book, which talks about him as the doctor to Tata Madiba. I am yet to do that. But I do want to say this, that Vijay had a very special relationship with Madiba. It was an extraordinary kind of situation. Even though he wasn't, when Tata passed on in 2013, he wasn't the Surgeon General. But when Tata passed on that night, in his house, Vijay was there because throughout he had never left his bedside. When Tata was at the heart clinic, I recall, sometimes power, somebody else had just come in and taken over. Now Vijay had now moved to another position, and sometimes you could see that a person doesn't understand why is he here, because you'll wake up in the morning 7 o'clock, you'll find Vijay in hospital, and you'll be received by him. When you leave the hospital or when you come, the last thing you do in the evening before you go back home, you'll still find Vijay at the hospital, together with the rest of the team, which was looking after Madiba. Now, when Tata passed on, the house was full. Mama Winnie was there, Mama Grasa was there. I had received a call to say, Minister, will you please come to the house? It was around 6 in the afternoon, late afternoon, early evening. And I was preparing to leave the country at 8 o'clock that night. Went to the house and I found many of our stalwarts of the movement. I walked in and I saw Vijay and he said, please come through. Up the stairs to the room where Tata was lying. Tata was still alive then. Now, next to Tata, there was Mama Grasa to the left, and to the right, there was Mama Winnie. Now, obviously, everybody by then were saying their goodbyes to the old man. At least of the group which was in there of men, the one person I saw with his tears running down his cheeks was Vijay. Vijay could not believe what was happening. Vijay was so attached to the old man. Vijay, I guess the relationship was such that they were able to share certain things together, but I saw his tears running down his cheeks. Now, military protocol can be very funny at times, but maybe good because it's very disciplined. The reason why I was called in there was for the people who were there, the Surgeon General, to inform me in the event something were to happen, and for me to call the chief to inform the chief, or for them to call the chief in order for the chief to call me to inform me, those kinds of processes, and then for us to go and inform the Commander-in-Chief, the President. We went, had a lengthy discussion, but I want to say, in the course of the sadness, the confusion, the shock, what I found very striking was that the Defense Force had prepared so well for the passing on of Udada. It was a matter of opening a drawer or a safe, take out a script, and go through everything by the book as written on that piece of paper. So there was no confusion. The confusion was amongst us because we were shocked, but they knew exactly what they were going to do at what time and when. And Vijay was amongst people who developed that plan. And I used to panic, I should say, during that period. I would go to the chief and say, Chief, it doesn't look good. Do you think we are ready? Chief Shoke. And you know, the chief would always say in his own way, don't worry, Minister, don't worry, we are ready. If it happens, we'll simply open and get our piece of paper and we'll run things according to what is written on that paper. What I'm trying to illustrate here is just how organized Vijay was. And I think also his skill in the underground helped him in a very big way. I never heard you'd go to Vijay and say something that I suspect you need to go and help there. I suspect there's something, I don't know what it is because I'm not a doctor, but I think you need to go there. You will not hear about it because Vijay will simply go to where you've asked him to go and do what he's supposed to do as a doctor, and he will not even come back and give you a response. He'll simply say, it's attended to, mission accomplished. That was the kind of person Vijay was. And I should say to you, family, because sometimes we do forget that we do all these things because we have your support. You never refused. You never held him back and stopped him from doing the work of the organization and from serving the nation. It was very dramatic indeed when Vijay appeared before the TRC. I recall very well some of the things he said at the TRC. And now, this is no insult. This is our language sometimes. It's like umalanje. So sizathi xa sibona umalanje athetha sithi India lethu ke lelo. That's our Indian, that one. So it would, and not in a sarcastic manner. Or umlungu, a white man and umlungu would say something sithi Mlungu wethu ke lowo. And it applied to Vijay as well, that we would say India lethu ke lelo. Because of just how brave he was, how eloquent he was, how he could present issues, and how he presented himself, by the way, before the TRC. And I think what I want to say as my parting shot here, because a lot of what I wanted to say was said by my chief about the Defense Force and his role. I want to make a plea to all of us to start writing our story. Honestly, Butterfly Group, Comrade Sweli, Comrade Klom, must write about their operations, the things they did, because South Africans don't know. The biggest problem about us is that our history is being written by people who are not South Africans, who come from across the shore, and they come to South Africa and they start penning the story of South Africans. There are very few, like Comrade Maharaji, who have decided to pen their history. Most of our comrades, including the story of Chrisani, was not written by one amongst us here. It was written by somebody, perhaps I don't know the person, maybe others know, but he wrote or she wrote the book nonetheless, and the book is there. And when you read the book, sometimes you pick up so many inaccuracies. So let us write our story. Let us tell our children what we had to endure. Rosa, write the story of what your mother had to go through. Interview your mother, record your mother, because she doesn't have the time. And write the story of what she had to go through with you in a prison cell with you. Do that. And this is what we are advocating for. This is what we've been talking about to our young people. Our young people don't understand the story of the South African people. We may be in denial sometimes about it. We see it every day in our own homes, in our own families. You listen to children coming back from school and you hear some of the things, the history, the struggle of the people of South Africa, according to some of these schools, began in 1994. 1990, when Madiba came out, for those of us who have small ones, grandchildren, when Madiba came out, that's when the struggle of the peoples of South Africa began. And yet, we know that Madiba himself served so many, and his comrades, so many years in prison. And we have the likes of Vijay. Vijay, lala kakuhle ndoda, lala kakuhle mfowethu. You were one of the few who would always carry your, I don't know what you call it, General Mapai, 3-star, SAMS. Vijay would always carry his small stick, put it under his arm. Vijay. Doesn't matter if we had a meeting of the National Executive Committee and Vijay had to see somebody at the meeting of the NEC. Vijay would always be well-dressed, very neat, and carry his small stick under his arm. That, to me, was a demonstration of the commitment, of the dedication of the man. He was very stubborn. Vijay could be very stubborn. Now, Vijay, I'm grateful that I've had the honor to be amongst those who are here to bid you farewell. But I also want to say something to you. There's something you owe me. And I wish in my dreams you will come and tell me where it is. He was so grounded in the underground of Vijay that Comrade Mac, because it's your training, there are things Vijay has never to date disclosed where they are. I guess because he was only 62, none of us ever anticipated that he would be gone so soon. Amba Vijay, sisatsala sisaqhuba hayi kunzima, and it's tough. The reactionary forces are also up. They are challenging the authority of your organization. But of course, we also do have those amongst us who have probably disappointed you where you are. But our message to you is just keep on guiding us. We believe that you are not away. Your spirit will live amongst us, and you will always whisper to us those messages where you want to correct and show us the right way to go. Now Uzweli is dealing with COVID-19. Continue to engage with him. Tell him which direction to go. It's not easy because doctors, fortunately the room is full of doctors, virus, and we are so excited. Some of us are victims of the virus already. But then you see in the news, somebody says, well, we are not ruling out its second wave around November, and it's so traumatizing. The whole thing is very traumatic. That you know it's gone, our numbers have gone down. Now you hear second wave is likely to come, and you put your hands on your head and say, but now what are we going to do? But you know what? Thank you. Thank you. Because one of the things we do not do as comrades, as colleagues, is to give support to one another and to pat one another on our shoulders and say, well done. And say, well done. You have done very well. I mean, I know there were very difficult debates at times, and you stuck to what you believe is correct, advised by the scientists. Well done. I don't want us to say when you are lying here like Vijay, then we tell your children that, remember that year there was a pandemic? Your father did A, B, C, D, and E. No, we must tell you that you have done extraordinarily well. Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you, family, Yaka Vijay, for giving your son to the nation, for allowing him to serve to the end. And I just hope that somebody will pick up his spear and write. From what I've heard, he had plans to continue to write. And I just hope somebody will have the courage to pick up that pen and continue to write like he did. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Honorable Minister of Defense and Military Veterans, permission to do the devotions. I thank you. To our Honorable Minister of Defense and Military Veterans, to Mama Ramlakan and the family, to our Honorable Minister of Health, Dr. Mkhize, to our Acting Chief of the South African National Defence Force, Lieutenant General Mapanya, and the Acting Sergeant General, to all our dignitaries, and to the people of the land. To our program director, Dr. Dlomo, the Brigadier General. Today, as I was listening, all the honorable speakers who were speaking here, I want to say, the Lord was listening. As He was listening, I want to say to all of us, let me respect all the expressions of faith that are with us to this funeral. The message this afternoon, in paying tribute and honoring Sergeant General, Lieutenant General Retired Ramlakan, are recorded as follows. We always thank God for all of you, mentioning you in our prayers. We continue to remember before our God and our Father your work produced by faith, your labor prompted by love, and your endurance inspired by hope. One of my all-time favorite songs is the one that was sang by the Bee Gees, and the song is called "Don't Forget to Remember." But the prophet here is writing to people who were stressful during that period, which I would believe all of us sitting here
we are in the same mood. But the author here stresses the importance of remembering. For people can forget. But where people forget, God remembers. And we as God's people, we have no right to forget what God remembers. If we forget how we made it, God has a way of making us to remember. We are obligated to remember. When others have been kind to us, don't forget to remember. Such was the Surgeon General. We have been permitted this afternoon, by God to come here and celebrate the life and the outstanding Surgeon General, whose sterling qualities, whose unselfish sacrifices made such an indelible and lasting impression to us. We have come again because it is important to give God honor and glory for the life of the general who unequivocally gave his all. This afternoon, we celebrate to reflect and recapture the relevance of the Surgeon General, whose untiring and unselfish sacrifices brought us to where we are today. We must call to mind, if not all, at least, the Surgeon General helped in shaping popular thinking and gave direction during crucial times. We are blessed when we speak about the general whom the goodness and the faithfulness, the power and the promises of God were bestowed upon him. This is also the same way in which the writer closes his great hymn by saying, "And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love." Such was the Surgeon General. All holy books insist on the need to remember and to call to mind that not only God's gifts and grace are to be remembered, but also we have to remember the Surgeon General's work produced by faith, his labor prompted by love, and his endurance inspired by hope. The work of God is a work of grace because it reaches out to those of us, and many of the speakers here who had no reason to expect benefits from God. And such was the Surgeon General. We should remember that what others have done for us, and remember them and thank God for them. we can never have any celebration without reflecting where we come from. Remembrance means looking back. And on the basis of remembrance, we can lift up our hearts, believing that He who calls us to remember is still faithful to carry us through. Our faith ought to be exercised in our living and in our actions. Our gathering today is an indicative of the fact that we are here because we remember what the Sergeant General has done for us and how his love impacted and allowed our lives to influence the lives of others. God's call is never about self. Rather, it is about being a blessing to someone else. A working faith, patience of hope, and labor of love. It is never about our glory, but God's glory. Unless we keep watch, unless we remember, it is easy to forget the input and the contributions made by those who went before us. That is why this afternoon we are reminded in no uncertain terms that we have no right to forget what God remembers. It is our responsibility to respect and remember those who gone before us. We have the responsibility to love and also to recognize the work done by those who gone before us. If this love, prompted by the Sergeant General, extends beyond the gender and extends beyond the generations, then surely it extends beyond genetics. Here was a Sergeant General blessed by God Himself with multiple skills, gifts, and graces. He was an accomplished Sergeant General, one of the best. It was these qualities that brought him to the attention of his nation. I am reminded about the words of one president in one country, where he said, I quote, "I have one life and one chance to make it count for something. My faith demands that I do whatever I can, wherever I am, for as long as I can, with whatever I have, to try to make a difference." As I conclude, even in the dark night of his soul, the general remained a soldier to the end. When he heard the trumpets and the bugles sounding heavenly reverb, waking him up for the dawn of a new day and a new morning, he lifted up his face without shame, for he was entering into the Lord's presence, ceasing his life of this earth to the beginning of heavenly life. I am so glad that somebody said to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. I am so glad that the general has found grace in the sight of God. To Mama Ramlakana, the Lord blesses you. The Lord shines his face upon you and your family. The Lord give you strength together with your family, and continue to fight, for the struggle is yet not over. God bless you all. I thank you. The following military protocols will be observed. Bearers for the late Lieutenant General Retired Ramlakana. Chief Warrant Officer Vika. Chief Warrant Officer Mutsamai. Chief Warrant Officer Janyawari. Chief Warrant Officer Papule, Chief Warrant Officer Ntemeza, Chief Warrant Officer Biela, Chief Warrant Officer Sotetsi, Chief Warrant Officer Van Veek, Senior Chief Warrant Officer in charge Mulefe. Take post.
Dear family, fellow mourners, the coffin is about to be transported out of the hall. Shall we please rise? In front of the coffin, in which the mortal remains of our late general are placed, is the chaplain general himself. Then the bearers, as you see them and whose names were called out, they will walk out in military fashion out of the hall, followed by the chief mourner, which is the acting chief, and his team, out of the hall onto the gun carriage, and then our convoy at ceremonial speed will lead us all the way to Clare Estate Crematorium. We have an appointment at 3. We are pressed for time. Thank you. Sorry, at the crematorium, only 20 persons are allowed as per the list that was compiled. The immediate family will join our convoy. The rest of the family may go home because only 20 can be taken at the crematorium. Thank you.
Yep.
Hello, mama, hello. I think it was a cable. I think it was a cable.
Yes, hi. One. Oh, go on tops. Hey. Okay. Tong Mambela Sispe. Yes? No. No, I can't. I can't. Hector angmuzwa. Oh. Yes, I can. I can, yes. Okay, standing by. Dr. Sibongiseni Dlomo. Dr. Sibongiseni Dlomo. Yeah, very good afternoon to our viewers. And of course, we're now about to wrap up the funeral service of the late Lieutenant General Vejay Ramlakan. The funeral procession is now leaving the City Hall as he makes his final journey to the crematorium just outside Durban. Of course, it's been a difficult day for the members of the South African National Defence Force who have come here to pay their farewells, to pay their respects to an exceptional leader. And of course, we also heard messages from his fellow combatants, the Dr. Zweli Mkhize, who he had served with as members of Umkhonto Wesizwe and they were under Operation Butterfly. A moving tribute as well from the Minister of Defence, Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngagula. And as much, and of course, one of the most notable things that the late general did was the fact that he was entrusted with the health care of the late former president Nelson Mandela, and of course the minister just taking us through, and particularly that last day when the former president passed away, and the role that the lieutenant general had played, and how sad he was. And she even said that on that day, of all the men that had surrounded the bed that were overlooking the former president, that she only saw the Lieutenant General cry. And she said that that showed that the two had a very, very close relationship, and that was so difficult for him, having all the years taken care of him. But now, as we wrap up, let me now bring in also a former friend, a colleague, a former combatant of the Lieutenant General, Dr. Sibongiseni Dhlomo. Dr. Dhlomo, thank you so much for agreeing to chat with us. Of course, it's been a very, very difficult day, from the tributes that we've heard today from the military as well. South Africa has really lost, as Dr. Mkhize said, a leader par excellent.
Yes, it has been a great and a very painful week, starting from the day he passed on. Yes, as one of the speakers said, there's an empty seat around us. He was so remarkable. He was so resourceful. He was a very brilliant leader. I mean, some of us, I remember I've worked with him since 1982. Humbling. I mean, for him to allow himself to be led by some of Condolence's commanders who were much younger than him, but who were given the task to lead us, was very humbling. I mean, he's a very good man. I've been touched. I stayed with him on Robben Island. We did so many things on Robben Island. We provided psychosocial support, medical support to our comrades. And that is why today there are certain comrades who are still alive and well because of the contribution of Comrade Vejay on Robben Island. And he came again, continued his fight, and right up to now, last days of Nelson Mandela, who was there on his bedside. So he's been a remarkable leader, and some of us are extremely humbled to have been associated with such a great man.
Just speaking about your days on Robben Island, and I know that one of the projects that he was working on and unfortunately was unable to finish was wanting to document the history, but also individually, the over 3,000 political prisoners on Robben Island. And I suppose that's now a task that's left to yourselves, Dr. Dhlomo, that you continue. He was a man that, from what was said in the tributes, you'd know as well how he was involved in the book where he documented the history of the military health service. So he wanted to keep our history. He wanted to ensure that the generations to come, that they know and understand where the struggle for liberation and the history of this country.
We'll do that diligently. We'll follow the footsteps of Dr. Vejay Ramlakan. But there's something probably you may not be aware. Dr. Ramlakan was arrested on 2 Nabada Road in Merebank, together with his wife, Sandy. They were arrested there, and we would like to actually convert that house into a monument, into a museum that will be called Vejay Ramlakan and Sandy Africa. Because in that house, we stayed as condolences. We learned a great deal. We were instructed there. We learned a great deal. They were mentoring Philandwande, and many of us grew underneath that. So a lot of other tasks that Comrade Vejay did not complete, we have an obligation to complete. Yes, rightfully so. Among other things, documenting what happened on Robben Island, we have to do that.
Humble and kind, I think, sums up what has been said through the tributes, what has been said today. But what else do generations that are coming up within the military, but as well within the African National Congress, but generally in the public, learn and can emulate from him?
While humble and kind, but very stubborn, he will stick to his principles. He will stick to what he says. He will make you realize. And actually, you have to take a bit of convincing if you wanted to actually. But he would still differ with you in a very respectful manner. We'll miss him. But what you can do for us is to learn what he did and actually take those examples and carry forward with the struggles. Because really, right now, the struggle has not come to an end. It is continuing. Comrade Vejay is one of those who have passed on. Thanks to Andrew Zondo, who saved his life. Because if Comrade Andrew Zondo gave testimony then in 1986, Comrade Vijay would have been sentenced to death on the spot. So he actually said, I'll carry on with the task because there are many more people who have laid their life before me and for me, and that is what also we would like to continue doing even after his death.
Dr. Dom, thank you so much for your time. Dr. Sibongiseni Dloma, a friend and a former combatant with the late Lieutenant General Vejay Ramlakan. Of course, his coffin and the family are now making their way from the Durban City Hall to the Clara State crematorium where he will be cremated. SANDF, the people of KwaZulu-Natal, the people of South Africa, indeed today saying their final farewells to a consummate soldier, a freedom fighter. And with that, it's back to you in studio. Thank you very much.